You know what they say. Families who get scarred together stay together.
It's called trauma bonding.
So best you believe, we're gonna get very bonded today. Just not physically or surgically like the ill-fated characters in today's movie. I mean, unless you want to. Just kidding. Unless. And now, The Human Centipede, it was one of those movies that I just, from my early days, promised myself I would never watch. That and a Serbian film. Because from all that I'd heard, The Human Centipede was just awful. And I mean, it is. But upon watching it, upon satiating that awful curiosity I had, I realized that while the subject matter is super gross and horrible and deplorable, the movie itself is more so overly just stupid. Don't get me wrong, there are some scenes in this movie which... they'll get ya. But even then, I still couldn't get fully immersed in how horrible it is, because I just thought, the subject of this movie is so dumb. It's so dumb. Who thought of this? Who thought of this movie? Check their hard drives. I'm gonna PG-13ify this movie as much as humanly possible for you guys today, and only show you just enough for some context, or some needed context. Only where that context is absolutely necessary for your understanding, okay? I'm gonna spare you a lot of the visual torment that these eyes got tormented with from the watching of this movie in its entirety. So grab your holy water and let's begin, and get prepared to chug this stuff. Lindsay and Jenny are American tourists from New York who are traveling around Europe and currently sightseeing in Germany. And one night when Lindsay and Jenny are driving over to a nightclub, they unfortunately, you guessed it, get a flat tire. Just like how every horror movie from the last 1,000 years starts. So of course they're also now stranded in the middle of nowhere, out in Whoopie-Doodah in the middle of woodlands and the forest. So they eventually decide to just leave their car and search for help, coming across a very secluded house also in the middle of nowhere. As it begins raining, all very good signs in a horror movie, all very green flags. And after knocking at the door for help, the door is then opened by a horrifically creepy man. A dude giving off the strongest serial killer vibes I've ever seen in any horror movie thus far. Like, damn, that is a face made for wanted posters. And after making sure Lindsay and Jenny are all on their own, he lets them inside to make a phone call. And once they're inside, he just casually locks the door behind them with a key, peeking outside the window to make sure he has no witnesses. So many green flags here, so many. And yet somehow the reddest flag so far is this painting he has in his front room. A painting that screams, "You have just entered the house of a serial maniac." What? And although the girls are kind of weirded out off the bat, because I mean, he looks creepy, has a creepy aura and demeanor and everything about him, ew. They end up taking a seat across from him in his front room, asking him if he could call the tow company for them since they're in Germany and they don't speak German. So he, somewhat begrudgingly, heads into the kitchen to make that phone call, but not before getting them each a cup of water to drink, with a special little addition. And then while he's preparing those special drinks, he begins making that phone call to the tow company, or at least he pretends to, and it's a convincing performance for sure. And after coming back into the front room and handing them each their drinks, he tells them the tow company will be there in 30 minutes at most. 30 minutes max. Oh, what a relief. So now they just have to wait. In that creepy serial killer-esque stranger's house, buried in red flags, and if there weren't awkward tension before, then good golly is there now. Especially when he announces to them that he doesn't like human beings. Or, maybe deep down he does, just not in human being form. Lindsay then accidentally spills her water all over his coffee table. And of course, creepy dude over here gets pissed about it, storming out of the room to get a towel for her to clean it up. Where he sneaks down to his basement medical lab, where he has a truck driver strapped up in one of his gurney beds, someone he went out to poach just earlier in the day, who is not only strapped up in one of those hospital gurneys this creepy dude has, but is also unconscious. Back upstairs while Lindsay and Jenny are waiting, they're also starting to finally realize that they should maybe, get the hell out of there, just as they realize they're starting to feel a bit groggy, especially Jenny, right as the creepy dude returns upstairs to very politely, very gentlemanly hand Lindsay the towel. So now, miles beyond uncomfortable. Lindsay asks the creepy dude if he can just call them a cab and they'll pick up their car later. They just want to go home. Not because of you, of course not. We're just tired. But 9. Creepy dude is only willing to make one phone call for them, and he already has. What is this, a charity? And right in that moment, Jenny starts passing out. Creepy dude calmly and nonchalantly explaining to Lindsay, oh, that's just the Rohypnol I put in your drinks kicking in. Huh? And then Lindsay starts feeling the effects of it as well, just not as strongly as Jenny, because Jenny ended up drinking a lot more of her water, Lindsay spilling most of hers. And though Lindsay tries her absolute darndest to turtle crawl away, she's no match for creepy dude over here. And after a bit of struggle, a bit of a Barney, he ends up injecting a sedative straight into her neck, like into the spine. Ew. So game over for Lindsay and Jenny. The next day, Lindsay first, then Jenny start waking up, awakening to being strapped up in his basement medical lab in those medical gurneys, alongside that poor trucker dude who was in there before them, from the day before. And of course, all 3 of them start freaking out. Enter creepy dude, pulling out his best Vogue stance, before casually making his way over to the trucker, just as calmly informing the poor dude that he doesn't match. So therefore, he needs to kill him. Which he just as swiftly follows through on. What can you say? At least he's a man of his word, right? But given that this here knockoff Dr. Frankenstein's last lab experiment was the conjoining of 3 dogs into a canine centipede, the kind of testing guinea pig lab experiment that inspired this current upcoming one, the human version, since he had to kill the trucker, he is now 1 person short of his ideal human centipede, and therefore heads out on the prowl for that lucky 3rd person, lucky number 3. Pretty soon after, he returns with an unconscious Asian dude, apparently named Katsuru, who will work perfectly as the 3rd addition to his cute little bug invention, his cute little centipede creation. But off the bat, this new addition is a very rambunctious one, a fighter, and as soon as he wakes up, extremely outspoken in regards to his fury. Though Katsuru does not speak English, so we don't get the full extent of his cursings and bellowings aimed at creepy dude over there. Now the proud owner of his 3 perfect specimens, Dr. Creep then gets suited up in his lab coat, turning on a fun little PowerPoint projection for his very unwilling pupils, telling them in his very eerie German accent that his name is Dr. Joseph Heiter, and that he's a retired but still very renowned surgeon, known for his skill in separating Siamese twins, or conjoined twins. And I guess now he's found interest in doing the opposite. Despite the threats and screaming and cursing coming from Katsuro, Dr. Hyder continues on in his speech, beginning to, in detail, explain this new sort of operation he invented. What a forward thinker Dr. Hyder is, right? And he tells them he's not separating anymore, he's creating. Explaining in boastful detail the ensuing operation and the subsequent horrors therein, which you'll see the final result of shortly. Just a little glimpse of it, okay? Just for context. Which includes starting off by cutting a ligament in the knee that will prevent them from walking, which it sounds wonderful already, Dr. Hyder. You're truly an inspiration. And although his 3 specimens, his 3 pupils, are all screaming and freaking out and crying, he goes on to calmly explain to them how he'll attach them lip to butthole with some precision cut skin flaps or skin grafts on both the face and butt to secure and fasten the connection for the best results possible. Because that's really an option here. Resulting in the perfect Siamese triplet of his dreams, of his nightmares, aka the Human Centipede. Which then can subsequently be fed from the first person all the way down to the last. Over time, if you know what I mean. Isn't science so beautiful? Wow. Dr. Hyder wastes no time in getting to work, drugging Katsuro first, given he's definitely the most outspoken and the biggest fighter of the 3, before moving on to drug Jenny. But before he can work his way down to knocking Lindsay out, she manages to escape her bindings and race out of that Cycles lab, accidentally ripping the IV out of her arm in the process. Ooh. And she dashes upstairs to the main floor, unfortunately finding all the doors to be locked and with a key. So she's just trapped in there with him. And after a high-stakes, almost never-ending game of cat and mouse, involving Lindsay locking herself into a room, Dr. Hyder going outside to then smash his way in, Lindsay falling into his indoor pool and him almost drowning her in there, and after she manages to evade him and sneak down to the lab, dragged unconscious Jenny all the way up the stairs and through that broken window without Dr. Hyder noticing them, and almost getting herself and Jenny freedom, Dr. Hyder eventually catches her again. Damn it. Dr. Hyder then telling Lindsay that since she's caused him so much trouble, he's now decided that she's going to be the middle piece of the centipede, which is the worst position you can possibly have. I mean, all of them would be awful, but the middle is the worst. Because then you have surgical attachments to the mouth and butt. Uh-oh, Lindsay. Ooh, this is not looking good for Lindsay or anyone involved. Ooh. So now that he has Lindsay and Jenny back, the operation can officially commence. And commence it does. And from here on out, as you can imagine, this is where the movie gets really gross. I'm gonna spare you from all the surgery scenes though, you're welcome, but the aftermath of the surgery is that Katsuro is the lead, the line leader, Lindsay is in the middle, and Jenny is the caboose. And you know, typically best friends always get separated in horror movies somehow, but now Lindsay and Jenny don't have to worry about that. That's been fully taken care of. The next day, after overseeing the replacement of his shattered window, Dr. Hyder heads back down to his basement to check in on his newly formed creation. His 3 little peas in a pod. And of course, Dr. Hyder is very pleased with himself, looking mighty proud and accomplished, and creepy of course. Ugh, yuck. And don't worry, from here on out, I'll do my best to keep all clips and footage of the actual Human Centipede to the barest minimum, okay? Just for the sake of your eyes. And just enough for context's sake, okay? And then Dr. Hyder heads over to wake up Katsuro, whom he now affectionately calls his lead, and then wakes up the remaining 2 to get them to all stand up or get up onto their knees. Again, who thought of this movie? What sick freak thought of this damn movie? How does this type of idea just randomly pop into someone's head one day? Ugh. Let's bring Leroy up front for a bit of a palate cleanser. Same with this shirt. There's no palate cleanser quite like SpongeBob, so you're welcome. Clyde and Geraldine will be supporting us from the back. But not in a Human Centipede type of way, okay? I mean, I do have 3 specimens here. Just kidding, I would never do that, okay? But solely because I don't have the funding or medical lab. Anywho, back to the movie. While his new creation, the 3 conjoined people, are experiencing this fresh hell and all the pain involved for the first time, Dr. Hyder is standing over them, screaming his own triumph and personal praise, snapping some pickies for the self-congratulatory scrapbook he's definitely gonna be making later, completely unhearing and uncaring to their cries of distress, until he starts crying alongside them, but tears of joy. Ugh. Ew. Psychopath 101. Absolutely bursting at the seams from his now overflowing god complex and egomania, like the psychopathic madman he really is. And when nighttime comes around, like the responsible pet owner he is, because that's pretty much how he views them now, he locks them up in a very long, custom dog crate, where Katsuro spends the entire night cursing and cussing out the psycho doctor, screaming at the top of his lungs. Solely from a twisted Dr. Hyder perspective, you think he would have put Katsuro, like, in the middle? Or the end where he wouldn't be able to use his mouth? But I'm not saying he should have, just you think he would have. The next day, Dr. Hyder takes his new beautiful creation, his brand new pet, outside to his secluded property, attempting to teach it how to fetch. But as you can imagine, Katsuro is not overly willing or reciprocating. Then afterward, like any responsible pet owner would do, he then feeds them dinner out of a dog bowl. Or just feeds one, Katsuro, the lead. And I'm just gonna let you guess how the other 2 eventually get fed. Because I don't want to say it. But the silver lining of the situation, just imagine how much money you'd be saving on groceries. Sorry. There actually is a scene in this movie where the second person is fed, but we're just gonna pretend that doesn't happen, okay? Skip right over that. Okay? Okay. And then the next few days proceed kind of just like that, with Dr. Hyder taking them outside to try and coax them to walk, or crawl, scuffle, locking them back in their crate at night, getting pissed when the girls don't keep their muffled crying to a minimum enough to allow him sleep, and punishing them all with a whip when they misbehave. You know, just a daily routine in the life of a psychopath. However, sometime later at one of their routine checkups down in the medical lab in the basement, you know, just Dr. Hyder making sure his beautiful new creation stays in tip-top shape, he finds that Jenny, who is the tail end, the caboose, is sick from a widespread bodily infection, and he looks more disappointed than anything. But what do you expect when you surgically attach anything to such a germy area? Top surgeon my ass. Or maybe let's not talk about asses. Let's not. Nonchalant as all living hell, Dr. Hyder informs Jenny that he thinks she's dying, and that, oh darn, he's gonna have to replace her. But mid bad news, Dr. Hyder gets a phone call of more bad news, or at least bad news to him, because it's the police, and they're at his door, and they want to talk to him. I wonder what about. I mean, Dr. Hyder seems like such a chill dude. What could he have possibly done? So, in a mad panicked rush, Dr. Hyder heads back upstairs, hiding the photo of his beloved pet, and then stripping off his lab coat, after which he collects himself enough to open the front door, letting the two detectives inside. But Dr. Hyder don't look too happy about the visit. And once the detectives are inside, they tell Dr. Hyder that there are some people missing, and that their vehicles were found in the neighborhood. Looking a little sus over there, Dr. Hyder. You'd think he would cover his tracks a little better, but feeling a little bit of pressure, Dr. Hyder assures him that he's way too busy with all his research and writing and all that other self-boasting, self-congratulatory crap to even leave the house, so it couldn't have been him. There's no way he could be involved. The Dr. Hyder? Do you know who I am? And then he quickly excuses himself to the kitchen to whip them up a glass of water. The Dr. Hyder special. Roofie water. And Dr. Hyder hands them each of their drinks in the most eerie Creepmeister way possible. So much so that it's pretty much a confession of his guilt in itself. While back in the basement, Katsuro is screaming at the top of his lungs to get the attention of Dr. Hyder's current guests. But because they're dealing with Dr. Hyder, the walls or the entire basement as a whole seems to be soundproofed, and soundproofed pretty damn well. Back upstairs, as the detectives are kind of sipping on their water, well, at least one in particular is, the main confrontational detective, he drops the bombshell to Dr. Hyder that a witness heard an American woman screaming on Dr. Hyder's property. But Dr. Hyder, of course, responds, "I have no idea what you're talking about." But in German, because, you know, they're in Germany. And as the main detective voices further suspicions, as the other detective is kind of just standing on the side, sipping his water, Dr. Hyder gets a little tantrumy, and needs to go down for his nap, apparently, starting to yell and scream at them about the situation, while insisting the main detective finishes his water, getting a little too demanding and persistent about it. Yeah, very subtle, Dr. Hyder. There's definitely nothing in that drink. But that detective is just as weirded out as me, and as Dr. Hyder is shoving that cup in his face, the detective slaps the cup out of Dr. Hyder's hand, dropping it to the floor and smashing it. And it seems that on top of being a complete psychopath, with both a superiority and god complex, bad combo, it's apparent that Dr. Hyder was never told no once as a child. Not once. Nor has he ever been stood up to, so he obviously does not like that. And after Dr. Hyder reels his resulting tantrum back inside, he stalks out of the room to go get a towel to clean up the mess, instead heading back down to the basement to his medical lab to get a horse trank, dipping into the other room to tell his Human Centipede creation that he's just now nearly acquired 2 new healthy specimens, to not only use one to replace Jenny, who he plans on dispatching soon, but to use them all to create a Human Centipede quadruplet. A Human Centipede with 4 segments. Because Dr. Hyder just can't get enough. And Dr. Hyder is very excited about that prospect. Quadruplets? Yes. His conjoined captives? Not so much. Especially Lindsay, who's now faced with the impending mercy kill of her best friend Jenny, who she's now closer to than ever before. Dr. Hyder then gleefully heads back upstairs to his ill-fated company, allowing a moment for Katsuro to stretch as far as humanly possible, or centipedely possible, to snatch a scalpel on the nearby table. So now he's got a weapon. So it's about to go down. Back upstairs, as Dr. Hyder is cleaning up the broken glass and water mess, the increasingly suspicious detective asks Dr. Hyder about what he has down in that basement of his. Because, basements are always pretty much evil. The detective asking further if he can take a quick look down there. And of course, Dr. Hyder is immediately defensive, telling them absolutely not, and that the detectives are gonna need a search warrant if they want to look down in the basement. To which the increasingly frustrated detective responds, "Okay, we can have one in around 15 minutes. And in the subsequently heated back and forth between them, the other detective kind of just standing along the sidelines and observing. Great teamwork. Dr. Hyder accidentally ends up dropping his tranq needle right in front of the detective, making the situation even more suspect. Not a good look. Not a good look. But Dr. Hyder quickly assures the probing detective that this needle, it's just insulin for my diabetes. Yeah, my diabetes, yeah. Definitely not a heavy-duty tranq. Of course not. Unconvinced and still very wary, the detective tells Dr. Hyder that they'll be back in around 20 minutes, so I guess not 15, with that warrant to search the creepy Dr. Hyder's equally creepy basement. And while Dr. Hyder plays it off cool like he doesn't care, if you insist on wasting taxpayer dollars, he secretly knows he's in deep crap. Deep crap. An ocean's depth of crap. So after the detectives have left to get that warrant, Dr. Hyder quickly hustles back down to the basement to, hide the evidence. Just poof. Just make his living, breathing, flesh and blood creation disappear into thin air. However, when Dr. Hyder makes it down to the basement, down to his medical lab, he discovers his creation has done just that. His human centipede has completely disappeared. Uh-oh, Dr. Hyder. But how the hell did they get off that table? Did they just tumble over or something? I don't know. Anyway, so Dr. Hyder now has to find them as well as hide them, or at least hide them as best as possible before the detectives return. And while Dr. Hyder is looking for them, Katsuro decides to speed up the process a little bit, making their whereabouts known by stabbing that scalpel he took into Dr. Hyder's foot, and then into his knee, which obviously incapacitates Dr. Frankenstein over here, and that gives the conjoined peas in a pod the opportunity to make a coordinated hustle crawl away, but not before Katsuro heads over and takes an angry nibble out of Dr. Hyder's neck. Saying that's deserved is an understatement. But remember, they're down in the basement, so they have to somehow traverse an entire spiral staircase to get back up to the main floor. Ah, hell. Not to mention that Dr. Hyder is starting to regain consciousness and get to his knees to crawl after them. Through one hell of a laborious, painful, agonizingly slow affair, the members of the Human Centipede are able to make it all the way up the stairs and onto the main floor. Oh my gosh. Thank goodness. Before Dr. Hyder is able to, who is also condemned to only being able to crawl now, given that he was stabbed in the knee. Eye for an eye. And since Lindsay, pre-connection, pre-surgery, was able to escape and run upstairs and run through the house a little bit, she knows a bit of the layout, and directs Katsuro, the line leader, toward that one room that Dr. Hyder broke the window in, not knowing that the window has since been repaired and replaced. And after an arduous, hellish struggle into that room, they discovered the replaced window glass firsthand. So now they're extra screwed, and swiftly becoming cornered. So Katsuro quickly grabs a lamp and tries smashing the window again, just as Dr. Hyder crawls all the way up to the room, bloody scalpel in hand, or in mouth. Arming himself with a shard of broken window glass, Katsuro shifts the Human Centipede to face Dr. Hyder, the tense face-off between Dr. Hyder and Katsuro, broken by a fit of Katsuro's manic laughter. He then begins emotionally confessing that he sees himself even lower than an insect, given how much of his life he squandered and how he squandered his family's love, and how he lives in guilt and remorse for so many things. And Dr. Hyder is just stunned and taken aback. Further stunned and taken aback when Katsuro, with that piece of broken window glass, begins slicing his own neck, killing himself right then and there. So now the line leader is dead, and the tail end, the caboose, Jenny, is really sick and will probably not live much longer. So Lindsay is now stuck between a rock and a hard place. Almost kind of in a literal sense-ish. In that same moment, the phone in the front room begins ringing again. So Dr. Hyder hastily army crawls away, realizing that it's once again the detectives back at the door, now with that search warrant. And since Dr. Hyder can't even walk anymore, there's no way he can cover up all his dirty mess. There's no way he can cover his tracks here. So he hurriedly stows himself away in his indoor pool room, scalpel in hand, as the detectives eventually break into his house. Guns drawn as they split up to search for Dr. Frankenstein. But in the midst of that search, one of the detectives, the less confrontational, less helpful one who was sipping on his water the whole time, begins feeling a tad woozy and nauseous. Because he definitely drank a lot more of the water than the other detective. But also, that was over 20 minutes ago. Shouldn't have kicked in way earlier, but what do I know? What do I know? Just as the main detective heads downstairs into the basement, finally, discovering Dr. Hyder's DIY surgical laboratory, as well as a puddle of blood on the ground. But after hearing a gunshot go off, the main detective rushes back upstairs, and while frantically searching the upstairs for his partner, he breaks into the room with the Human Centipede in it. Or more so, the 2/3 of the Human Centipede, discovering Dr. Hyder's twisted, debauched humanoid creation, stunned, shocked, and repulsed at the sight of this conjoined human travesty. Horrified and now fully realizing the whole extent of how dangerous the situation is, the detective races out of the room to try and find his partner, eventually finding his partner face down in the swimming pool, surrounded by a clouding of blood. And to make a bad situation 1,000 times worse, Dr. Hyder is still over there in the corner, but now with the detective's gun, quickly shooting at the newly arrived detective, his main op. Dr. Hyder manages to shoot off 2 rounds into the detective before the detective fires back, shooting Dr. Hyder almost straight between the eyes, finally killing that absolutely psychotic monster of a man. But shortly thereafter, after the killing of the evil Dr. Hyder, the detective then keels over into the pool and dies right next to his partner. And since everyone in that house is apparently hopping on the death bandwagon all willy-nilly, the 2/3 left of the Human Centipede then shortly becomes 1/3 of the Human Centipede, as Jenny right then and there succumbs to her infection and dies, probably due to septic shock. But she dies while holding Lindsay's hand, so all better, right? So on top of the atrocious grief of having just lost her best friend, especially in this type of situation, Lindsay is now stuck surgically sandwiched between the deadline leader and the now dead caboose of her best friend. Unable to move at all, and entirely at the mercy of a merciless situation. Her sole hope of eventual rescue being that hopefully other officers will soon come to Dr. Hyder's house, looking for the now MIA detectives, a rescue that will hopefully be expedited and ensured given the fact that the detectives went back over to his house with a search warrant, a recently granted search warrant, so there's a good chance police will eventually come, right? But how long will she have to wait in that horrific state, attached to 2 dead bodies? And then thankfully, by the grace of God, the movie cuts to black and ends. And you know, a lot of the times here, after I'm done going through the movie, I usually recommend them to you. I recommend you guys watch them, but not today. Today's movie is not the case for that. Because this movie is all sorts of horrific. It really is. I think especially to a normal person watching it, because by this point, I'm a little bit desensitized to horrific movies, so this one wasn't too bad, I guess. Like I said, I more so thought of it as, like, stupid and dumb and, like, really? Really, who made this? But I can definitely see other people, normal people, having an adverse reaction to this movie, because it's bad. It's real bad. But now you don't have to watch it, right? You know what happens. And I hope I sated your curiosity enough that you don't feel the need to watch it for yourself. Don't worry, I already suffered through that, so that you guys wouldn't have to. But yes, it's a very sick, twisted movie, a ridiculous concept, and the creator of said movie genuinely and truly, wholeheartedly needs his hard drive checked. You know what I mean? This kind of subject matter does not come out of nowhere. You know what I mean? So if you made it this far, congrats, I guess. I'm sorry. And I recommend you go and restock your supply of holy water, since by the end of this video, I'm sure it's completely bone dry. Oh man, I'm sorry.